Good morning. Good to see everyone this morning. I was telling Brother Wayne and Brother Tyrone, it's usually it's a potluck. I won't call it what I normally call it, but it's potluck today. So you know how it is. Everyone's making their food and everything, and we normally get a little bit of a late start. And so I had to ride with Grady this morning because my wife said there was zero chance she was going to make it to church on time. So she said just go without her. So that's what I did. And so if you have your Bible, turn to 1 Samuel. I was about to read your own. 1 Samuel chapter number 9. 1 Samuel chapter number 9. And last week we were in chapter number 8. And we were looking at chapter number 8, and just for those of you who weren't in here, just a refresher. The beginning of chapter number 8 it says, "It came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his son judges over Israel." And I'll skip verse 2. Verse 3 said, "His sons walked not in his ways, but turned aside after lucre and took bribes and perverted judgment. Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel unto Ramah and said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations." And so this broke Samuel's heart, and we looked at this last week. We looked at how that Samuel went to God, and God said, "Samuel, they haven't rejected you, but they've rejected me." And God tells Samuel, He said, I'm going to give them one more chance. I want you to solemnly protest. I want you to solemnly explain to them what it's going to be like. I want you to make them understand that having a king is not what they think it is. And you know, I thought about it because I've been thinking about this all week. There have been quite a few times, Brother Wayne, there have been quite a few times in my life where people have solemnly protested unto me, and I should have listened. There have been quite a few times when someone just set me down and just said, "Hey, this is how it is." And Brother Parks, and it's a shame because unfortunately, you have to get older sometimes to be wiser. When you're young, you think you know everything. It's like, just typical. I was the typical teenager that, thought I was much more intelligent than my father was, and that I knew things. And then you get older and realize how smart your dad was and how unintelligent you were. But how many times has someone just said, and not every time, but sometimes someone just sets you down and you just have it in your mind, this is the way I have to have it. This is the way I have to have it. I'm doing it this way, and someone sits down and says, "Hey, that's probably not the best way," and you're like, "Well, thanks for all that advice, but I'm doing it my way." And so that's what happens to Samuel here, is he protested them, and in verse number 19, it says, "Nevertheless, the people refused to obey." He protested. He said, "Look, this is what's going to happen to your sons. This is what's going to happen to your daughters. This is what's going to happen to your land. This is what's going to happen to your vineyards. All these things are going to happen to you." And they looked, and I mentioned it last week. And I'll say it again. How a lot of times you always think you're the one, like. That may have happened to 99 out of 100 people, but I am that one. I am the one that it's not going to happen to. You can tell them all. You can give them statistics. Again, you can say these are the things, and 8 out of 10 people it's going to happen to. He said, "Well, I hate it for the other 8 because I'm going to be one of the 2." And that's what it appears these elders of Israel were. They looked and they said, "Well, that sounds good, Samuel, but that's not going to happen to us." And you're going to see in the next chapter that we're about to start looking at that Saul's servant said, "Hey, whatever Samuel says comes to pass." Whatever Samuel says comes to pass. But yet in chapter number 8, when these elders come to him and he says all these things are going to happen, they said, "Nah, that's not going to happen to us. That's not going to happen to us." So in verse 19 it says, "Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel." Again, like I said, I know you don't really get a do-over in life. You can get saved and God can wash away your sins, but you'll understand what I'm saying here. You don't really get a do-over in life. But Brother Parks, I wish with the wisdom that I have now, when someone set me down and solemnly protested to me, solemnly tried to educate me, that I would have, Brother Wayne, even sometimes just taken the time and said, you know what, you're right. I'm going to pray about it and just let me let me slow down right here. Let me just slow down and just figure out, okay, is this really what God wants, or is this what I want? Is this what God wants of me, or is this what I want of me? And I'm just doing it. And sometimes, even in this example right here, excuse me, I'm going to get rid of that cough by about December. But sometimes God will let you have what you don't need because that's what you want. God is giving them a king, and he said, Samuel, they didn't reject you, they rejected me. But that's what they want, so that's what we're going to give to them. And we're going to see, because of who he gives them, it's almost like, hey, that's what they wanted, so that's what I'm going to give it to them. And then when David becomes king, things are different. But Saul does not turn out to be a very good king. And those no doubt were his choices. He had a choice to do right and chose to do wrong. But you understand that God he put Saul as king first. And so it says they refused to obey the voice of Samuel and said, nay, but we will have a king over us, that we also may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. Now, I think that's very important, because whenever God chooses Saul, we're going to see that God chooses Saul, and when you look at Saul, he looks like a man that can go out and fight their battles. But unfortunately, looks can be deceiving. Looks can be deceiving. You can look. I know. I've read up on the Navy SEALs and stuff, and listened to people who became SEALs, and they said the thing that shocked them most, because you start out with 100 in Bud's class or whatever, however many they start out with, so many, and when they get to the point where where they ring the bell or not, they're always shocked at the people that look the most athletic, the people that look the most physically fit. They just look, some of these other guys sitting there looking, and these people are a physical specimen. And they're very athletically talented and athletically gifted, and they've lifted a bunch of weights and strong. But the problem is they're not mentally strong. And so because of that, they get in there and they get pushed, and they're going to push them past their breaking point. And they're, a lot of times, Brother Wayne, it says they're the first ones to ring out and say, I'm done. They're the first ones that people look and say, I can't believe that guy. And then that defeats other people, because they say, well, if he can't make it, how am I? And so here we have the nation of Israel, and they said, we want someone that's going to go out before us and fight our battles. So in verse number 20, it says that we also may be like all the nations, that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of the Lord. And the Lord said to Samuel, hearken unto their voice, and make them a king. And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, go ye every man unto his city. Now again, it's interesting, because yes, they didn't reject Samuel. Samuel at this point is still their judge. They go to Samuel and said, make us a king. And God said, again, they didn't reject you, they rejected me, but they're going to allow Samuel to make the decision, which is interesting to me. It's like, hey, we're going to rebel, but we want you. And sometimes, Riley, you ever seen someone who's not willing to make a decision? They don't want to make a decision because they don't want to bear the responsibility of the decision. And so if they're like, they'll get a bunch of advice, they'll get advice, and then they're like, well, you're the one that told me to do it. And so here the children of Israel, they're like, we want you to make us a king. You pick him out. And remember, they rejected, they didn't necessarily reject Samuel, they rejected Samuel's sons because they had corrupted themselves. Not like Eli's sons, but they had corrupted themselves. And so they used that as their excuse as they said, hey, you're old and your sons walk not in your ways, make us a king. Now, Brother Parks, in my mind, again, and I'm reading it, several thousand years later, but I'm reading this and I'm looking like, why didn't they just say, Samuel, ask God who's going to be your replacement? We're not ever going to accept your sons. Your sons have corrupted themselves. We do not trust your sons, and you cannot put your sons over us. It cannot be your sons. But ask God who's next in line. Give us, because they, again, we read it last week. We're not going to read it this week, but they just won a battle. They just won a battle with Samuel as their head, as their judge. They just won a battle in chapter number 7. And God had won the battle for them. And yet here they are saying, no, we need someone that's going to go out and fight our battles for us. What's wrong with the way it was working? And yet they come to Samuel instead of saying, hey, Samuel, ask God what he wants for us next. Ask God, you're getting older. You're getting older. Your sons are not acceptable. Ask God who he wants. That's not what they do. So we want a king. We will have a king. There will be a king to rule over us. And God says, give them what they want. Give them what they want. So you get to chapter number 9, and we'll just work our way down through chapter number 9 here. It says, now there was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Baal, the son of Zeror, the son of Behorath, the son of Aphiah, a Benjamite, a mighty man of power. And so here we're going to learn about Saul's father, and we're going to learn that he's a mighty man of power. In the center section of my Bible, it says substance. He is a wealthy Benjamite. Now, if you remember, the Benjamites had basically gotten themselves almost completely wiped out. They had gotten themselves almost completely wiped out to the point where there was only 600 men left. And so now that tribe has started building themselves back up. So when you hear Saul say, hey, I'm the least, that's kind of true. But here is Saul's father, and yet he has built himself up. He's built up this wealth. And so in verse number 2, we're going to talk about Saul. And it says he had a son whose name was Saul, a choice young man and a goodly, and there was not among the children of Israel a goodlier person than he. From his shoulders and upward, he was higher than any of the people. So now again, here we go to looking at appearances. And if you remember, even Samuel looked at appearances. Whenever it was time to anoint David king, whenever David's oldest brother comes out, Samuel thought, that's got to be the one right there. And God said, don't do that. Don't look at the outward appearance. And so here is God, and God is giving them what they want. They want someone that's going to go out before them. They want someone that's going to go out and fight their battles. And so why not the biggest, strongest, healthiest looking man in the country, Brother Parks? It said there wasn't one in the whole, among the children of Israel. Now, when you read this, and again, I'm kind of torn because I read some of the commentaries, and they just mention his stature, and then I listen to preaching, and some of them just mention his stature. But I mean, the Bible says he was a choice young man, and I think he was a good young man. And what we're going to see is as we work through his life here, it's a shame because you can start out really good. You can start out so good, Riley, but you can ruin it all by how you finish. You can ruin it all by how you finish. And it's a shame because again, we're all different ages in here, but as a young man, you don't think about, man, I'm going to have to finish one day. You're not thinking about it. Now, someone was talking about that the other day, and they said, I never really thought about that. Oh, I think it was Brother Jones. I was talking to Brother Jones during the meeting, and he, I think he may even have mentioned it in preaching. He said, when I was young, I didn't think about it. But now I'm thinking about it. Now I'm thinking about it like, hey, we're getting closer. And how you finish is important. And so here is Saul, and he starts out as good as anyone can start out. It says he was a choice young man and a goodly. And there was not among the children of Israel a goodlier person than he. Here, as God is describing him, he said there wasn't another man. There wasn't another man that was more choice, that was better. There wasn't another man that was just, in stature and appearance. Everything about him was good, Chris. Everything appeared good. But we're going to see eventually, that Saul never really truly had his own personal relationship with God. Saul never really establishes his own relationship with God. And as he does religious things, it's a lot of times it's in the wrong time, or he wasn't supposed to be the one doing it, or he's going to proclaim a fast. Right in the midst of a battle, he decides, we're fasting today, boys. But it doesn't look like it was a spiritual fast. It was just a fast. And so a lot of times he does these spiritual things, and he's been rejected as being king. And he's been rejected, and he tells Samuel, he said, hey, I want you to worship with me. And Samuel's like, I'm not worshiping with you. And he compels him to worship with him. And when you see that, it almost appears that Saul was much more into his image than he was to his relationship. And so he needed it to appear that he was something that he wasn't. God had rejected him for being king. And he's like, I want you to worship with me. Why? Because the people are watching. And he's been rejected. But he said, worship with me. And so here is Saul. And Saul has a good image. But if all you have is a good image, eventually what's on the inside comes out. If all you are is polished on the outside, what you have on the inside is going to come out. And so in verse number 3, it says, and the asses of Kish, Saul's father, were lost. And Kish said to Saul his son, take now one of the servants with thee, and arise, go seek. Yeah. Now, understand that God is working this out. God is working this out. That where God is going to tell Samuel the day before that a Benjamite is going to be coming, and he's the one that you're going to anoint to be king. But we've already had God open up the gate, or however it was back then, whether it was just the fact that they let their animals free range, and then it was time to round them up, and they couldn't find them. However it was back then, they look for the donkeys and they can't find them. And so Kish goes to his son Saul, and Saul is he's not like Grady's age. Saul's already married at this age. He already has children at this age. But he goes to his son and he says, "Hey, we can't find them. I need you to take one servant and I want you to go look for them." There's no protest. Brother Parks, I'll be honest with you, sometimes I wish my kids would do things and not protest whatsoever. Sometimes I wish my kids, when I say, "Hey, it's time to take the trash out," they didn't be like, "Oh, Dad." I don't want to hear "Oh, Dad." Me and Grady were working yesterday, and I told him to do something, and he wasn't happy about it. And we were working at our new house over there, Paul, and I said, "Weed against that fence." And it did have some big stuff, and Grady's like, "You can't." I'm like, "Oh, yes, you can." He's like, "You can't." I'm like, "Oh, yes, you can." And he said, "You can." And he showed me, and we were signing because I'm riding the lawnmower and he's doing the weed ear. And we were kind of sign language, and he told me he didn't want to do it. And I finally told him, I said, "I don't care if you have to break them with your fingers. You're going to clean that fence line." That's not what Kish had to do with Saul. Kish just had to say, "Hey, here's the job. Here's the job. I want you to go do this job." And Saul said, "Sure." And so not only was he a goodly man in appearance, he obeyed his parents. He obeyed his father. And again, this wasn't a simple task. You think, we're going to see it here in just a second. It wasn't like he's like, "Well, I know exactly where they're going to be. I know exactly where." We don't know. We don't know where they were when they decided to walk off. We don't know where they were when they decided to walk off. Sometimes you're like, "Hey, my cow gets out," and every time my cow gets out, they're going to go, or right down here. Matthew and them not in here, but they deal with cows getting out all the time. But you know what I'm saying? A lot of times they know if that cow gets out, he's going straight for whatever. But Saul didn't know that. And so when you see right here in verse number 4, it says, "And he passed through Mount Ephraim, and he passed through the land of Shalisha, but they found them not. Then they passed through the land of Shalem, and there they were not. And he passed through the land of the Benjamites, but they found them not. And when they were come to the land of Zuph, Saul said to his servant that was with him, 'Come and let us return.'" They've been gone several days. They've been gone several days. They've been gone so long that Saul said, "You know what? They're going to stop worrying about the donkeys, and they're going to start worrying about us, because we've been gone for so long." So number one, you see that Saul's persistence. He just don't you hate when people do just a halfway job? If you hire someone to do something, if you're paying someone to do something, and you're like, "I need you to do this," and you go out there. When they built my house, the guy that started building my house ended up firing him halfway in between, and ended up having to get another contractor. But he was doing stuff, and they were putting stuff up, and then they were trying to make it look like they were a lot further along than they were, so they could get more of their draws. And so when you went back and looked, there would only be like one or two nails in the sheathing, and nowhere near enough nails. So I ended up spending like nights and weekends driving all the nails in the sheathing on the house, because there wasn't any nails in there. But what they were doing, they were trying to make it look like they had a lot more done than what they did. And so here Saul was not that person. His father said, "Go look," and Saul went and looked. And he looked, and he looked, and he looked, and he did, and I imagine I'm going to lump all the men in one category, and maybe y'all are not this way, but my wife will understand what I'm saying here. If there's something missing in my house, Paul, there ain't no reason to tell me to go look for it, because I'm not going to find it. I'm going to be like, "Yeah, it's not down here." from the top of the stairs in the basement. "Yeah, I don't see it in the basement." I'm telling you, it's right there. I'm like, "Nah, it ain't there. It's not there." And then my wife will go, or Adriana, they'll go down there and they'll be like, I told you it was right there. And so, but I mean, that's just how I am. Maybe y'all are not that way. That's just how I am. Like my wife's like, I'm telling you, it's gonna be in the second drawer down. I'm like, pull the drawer out, slide the door shut. I didn't see it, because I didn't rifle through it. But anyway, so Saul was not that way. He went to this place and said, and I'm sure as he's going, he's talking to people. Have you seen them? Have you seen them? I haven't seen them. Carry on a little further. And his servant that is with him is also a good servant because he's never complaining. You never hear him complain. But when they get to verse number 5 again, it says, Saul said to his servant that was with him, come and let us return, lest my father leave caring for the asses and take thought for us. Now, Chris, again, when you read the beginning of Saul, and we know how Saul's going to end, you're like, how did a guy get from here to there? How did a guy get from growing up with a good family, having a good father, being a good person, being a respectable person, a person that would carry out his responsibilities to the end, and was a thoughtful person? I mean, you think about this. 3 days in, when I was a teenager, we didn't have these things when I was a teenager. We didn't have cell phones. Now, I told y'all my story that my dad had, apparently he was special ops in the military or something, because, or he knew someone in the military, because he had GPS tracking on me long before GPS tracking was ever put out on the public. And I'd walk into a store, Brother Parks. I'm not talking in my hometown. I'm talking an hour away from my hometown. I'd walk in a store and they're like, hey, your dad wants you to call. How did he even know I was going to Cumberland today? Much less, because I didn't tell him. Much less, no. But when I was a teenager, once I got my license, Brother Tyrone, like I was a free range chicken. And my dad didn't have a lot of rules, like he didn't have a lot of, stuff on me. And so I was literally a free-range chicken. I would drive 4.5, 5 hours to Brother Jones' meeting at the spur of the moment. I just load up clothes in my bag and drive 4.5 hours to Oceana, West Virginia, and spend the week down there with them. At 17 years old. And so, but yet my dad, he could find me, anywhere. And here's Saul's dad, and he didn't have GPS either. And Saul said, hey, listen, my dad's gonna worry. I wasn't even like that when I was a kid. My dad, he'd get on to me like, son, I know we're men and everything, but you gotta call in and just let your mom know you're okay, because she worries. It never even crossed my mind, Brother Wayne. I'm like, if I'm dead, someone will call him. If I'm in a wreck, someone will call him. I hadn't called, so it's kind of like the person that said I love you when they first got married. And I hadn't changed my mind yet, so why do I need to keep saying it? That was kind of my philosophy when I was a teenager. Like, if there was a problem, I'd call. You should worry about the phone call, not the lack of a phone call. But again, that wasn't how my mom thought. And so my dad be like, just call and tell us you got there. I got an 800 number. My dad owned a business. I got an 800 number, son. It's not even going to cost anyone. You can call from a payphone, which, half the people in here know what we're talking about. The other half like, what in the world's a payphone? You can call from a payphone. You don't have to call collect from someone else. Just punch at 800, 1-800-533-DOVE. And so that was the number. And you could call. Just call. Saul said, hey, there's no phones. There's no internet. There's no GPS. There's no Find My iPhone. The boys hate it because I know I always know where they're at. And it starts getting close to closing time at the Dove House, and I'm like, all right, I need y'all home, and I figure out where they are, and I give them like 5 extra minutes from how long it takes to get home. I need y'all home at 10:15. And so, but there was none of that. And Saul was conscientious enough and loved his father enough to say, hey, I know my father, and my father's a good man, and yes, he's worried about his substance. He's worried about the donkeys, but he's going to be worried more about me because I've been gone for 3 days, and he hadn't heard anything from us, and we're pretty far from the house. And his servant said, and so in verse number 6, it says, and he said unto him, so this is the servant talking, behold now, there is in this city a man of God. And I'm going to say right there, truer words were never spoken. Truer words were never spoken. And listen as he describes him. And he is an honorable man. All that he saith cometh surely to pass. Now let us go thither, peradventure he can show us our way that we should go. So here is this servant, and one of the things that I find interesting in the Bible is how many times it's not the big dog, it's not the head hog at the trough, it's just the servant that has the wisdom. It was just that little servant girl, and I think I mentioned her last week. That little servant girl that said, Naaman, excuse me, Mr. Naaman, there's a prophet in the land where I'm from. And if you go to him, I don't know how she had the faith to think that he could cleanse Naaman of leprosy, but she did. And he was. And it's just a servant. It wasn't Saul's idea. It wasn't Saul's idea, but here is God working things out. First he let the donkeys loose, and then he let the servant that Saul chose be the servant that said, hey, man, we sure are close to that man of God. It appears that Saul doesn't really even know who Samuel is. It appears that Saul doesn't really have a clue who Samuel. We know that when he sees him and he asks, hey, where's the seer at? And Samuel has to say, I'm the one. So we know he at least didn't know him by sight, but here's the servant that said, hey, we're so close. Why don't we just go talk to him? Because he's an honorable man. I'm going to mention again, it's a shame that couldn't be said about his 2 sons. But he was an honorable man. And all that he saith cometh surely to pass. So here again is a servant. What if this servant had been with the elders of Israel and say, guys, why don't we give Samuel the benefit of the doubt and say, look, you're an honorable man, and we know that eventually you'll come to your senses about your sons, that they're not the ones. What if the servant had been there? But he wasn't. And so he said, let's go because he can show us our way. And in this verse right here, I'll just mention it while we're here. I understand we live in a different age. I understand that we are, that once we're saved, we're given the Holy Ghost, and we can read our Bible for ourselves and we can pray for ourselves. But that does not neglect the fact that you need a man of God in your life. You need a man of God in your life. You need a man of God in your life that can show you the way. Like I said, I understand we have a Bible. I understand that we can pray. But these people that think, it drives me crazy. You go out, you're talking to people, and you're like, hi, I'm Paul from, Concord Baptist Church. And they're like, yeah, we go to house church. Oh, yeah? Yeah, we go to house church. Which is usually means, yeah, we don't do anything but just leave us alone. If we are going to worship, we're going to worship at the house, and we're going to worship the way we want to worship, and you're not going to tell us anything. And I'll just say what they said about Jesus. We're not going to have a man rule over us. We're not going to submit to a church covenant right there. We're not going to agree to a church covenant and be like, we're going to have a man in authority over us. And I'm not saying, and again, we understand, everyone in here understands our pastor's not a dictator. Your pastor shouldn't be a dictator. But you understand, you need a man of God in your life. And so he said, hey, then verse number 7, then said Saul to his servant, but behold, if we go, what shall we bring? Now I'm going to say this also about Saul here. Look at how Saul treats his servant. You'll see it again here in a second. Let me just read it so we see it. Then said Saul to the servant, but behold, if we go, what shall it bring the man? For the bread is spent in our vessels, and there is not present to bring the man of God. What have we? And the servant answered Saul again and said, behold, I have here at hand the fourth part of a shekel of silver. That will I give to the man of God to tell us our way. Before time in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, thus he spake, come and let us go to the seer, for he that is now called a prophet was before time seer. Then said Saul to his servant, well said. Come, let us go. So they went unto the city where the man of God was. And what I'm going to say right here, again, back to early Saul versus late Saul, think about that, how he treated this lowly servant of his father's, and how he ended up treating David. And how he ended up treating David. David that never wished Saul an ill anything. If you remember what started this several weeks ago was where we read where David was lamenting the fact after the death of Saul and Jonathan, how are the mighty fallen? And he said Saul and Jonathan were lovely. Brother Tyrone, if someone had done all, and we talked about this a few weeks ago, but if someone had done all the things to me that Saul had done and attempted to do, if you try to kill me twice with a spear, I don't know that I'm going to say you're lovely. It's probably not the first words that are going to come to mind. If you run me ragged all over the country and seek my life and cause me to hide amongst the enemies of God and basically have a bounty, if you do all the things that Saul did, if you, I think Brother Randy may have mentioned it, someone mentioned it the other day, but they were talking about Doeg. Whenever Doeg slew, he didn't just slay one priest; he slew them all but one, and their families, he just slew everything. All because David came and he gave David that bread that technically he wasn't supposed to have, but yet he got it anyway. Jesus even mentions it in the New Testament. But yet, and he was even nervous when he gave it to him. And Saul accused him of being a traitor, and then had him killed. I don't know that I could say that person was lovely. But here early on, here's Saul, and and he has this servant, and this servant said, "Hey, let's go up to the man of God." Saul's like, "That's a good idea." And then he's like, well, wait a second, we don't have anything to bring him. We've already ate all the bread. We've already, And he's like, hey, I got this little bit of money right here. And he's like, well, that's a great idea. Well said. And so as you look early on, you can see, man, like it really looks. You ever have? I know Brother Tidwell dipped his toe in politics for a little bit, but sometimes, Brother Tidwell, in politics, you have voter remorse, where you're like, man, I'm listening to this guy, and I see this person, and I hear them, and they talk so wonderful, and you're like, I'm going to vote for that person. And then you vote for them, and they get in office, and they turn out to be a scoundrel. And you're like, what? That's not the person. That's not the person. You lied to me. I don't know if Saul was lying to himself. I don't know if that's just who he was inside. But at this point in his life, he was a good man. And so it says, they said, well said, come and let us go. So they went unto the city where the man of God was. In verse number 11, it says, and as they went up to the hill of the city, they found young maidens going out to draw water, and said unto them, is the seer here? Now again, here we have some lowly people. It's just the young maidens, just the young ladies. And they're just going to draw water. They're just going to draw water. And he said, and they answered them and said, he is. And to me, it's a shame that Saul, in whatever prestige he had in his father's house, never met Samuel, but here are these young maidens, and they're like, oh yeah, he's here. We know him. We've seen him. And you can tell that they have a great respect for him and the work that he does. It said, behold, he is before you. Make haste now, for he came today to the city, for there is a sacrifice to the people today in the high place. And as soon as you come into the city, you shall straightway find him. Before he go up to the high place to eat, for the people will not eat until he come, because he doth bless the sacrifice, and afterwards they eat that be bidden. Now, Saul doesn't realize, but he's sitting at the head of the table. He's about to sit at the head of the table. Those that are bidden, there's 30 other people that have been bidden, but him and his servant that day, they're sitting at the head of the table with Samuel. Because in verse number 15, and I'll stop right here. Now the Lord had told Samuel in his ear a day before Saul came, saying, tomorrow, about this time, I will send thee a man out of the land of Benjamin, and thou shalt anoint him to be captain over my people Israel, that he may save my people out of the hand of the Philistines. For I have looked upon my people, because their cry has come to me. Now, just a couple things right here. Number one, here's God. The day before, God said, hey, I want you to know, I want you to understand, I want you to be aware. The king that we promised him, the king that we said we were going to anoint, he's coming. He's going to be in your city tomorrow. He's going to be in your city, and he's going to be. And again, like I said, I'm sure Samuel thought he's probably coming from the tribe of Judah, and God says, no, not Judah. I've got a Benjamite. I've got a Benjamite. I've got a Benjamite that's going to come tomorrow. And so we're going to see it later in the chapter that Samuel actually tells his servant, hey, I want you to hold off this portion, because the new king's going to be here tomorrow. The new king is going to be here tomorrow. The man that's going to be king over Israel. And honestly, if you want to look at it this way, and it shouldn't have been this way, but the man that's taking my place. They rejected me. They said, we want a king. The man that's about to take my place and be over Israel is coming tomorrow. And if I were the servant, I'd be like, well, who is he? Who is he? And Samuel said, I don't know. God hadn't told me that part. He just said he's coming tomorrow. But I'll know him when I see him. Thank you.